Okay, so this is consumer consumer buying behavior. All right. Now, apart from your consumer buying behavior, which is directly related to your buyer's black box, okay, you also have something called a stimulus response model. Okay. Now, your buyer's black box is sort of like your buyer's guide as to how the buyers and buying process works. Okay, so if you look at the buyer's black box, you're looking at, okay, your marketing strategy, okay, your marketing stimuli that impacts the buyer, as well as the environmental stimuli. Okay, so when we talk about marketing stimuli, you have your marketing stimuli. Your marketing stimuli will be things like product, price, place, and promotion. So this is product, price, the four P's, place, and promotion. Okay, so the pricing strategy will have an impact on the customer. Okay, as the price goes down, demand goes up. For example, the place where you sell this product has an impact on the customer. Okay, if you offer deliveries, for example, that's even better. Okay, promotion, any promotional offers, any discounts, any coupons, tokens, so on and so forth. Okay, and the actual product that you sell. Okay, so the functionality of the product, the aesthetics, okay, so on and so forth. So these are all examples of marketing stimuli, and these over here, the marketing stimuli will have an impact on the buyer's decision making process, along with what we call environmental stimuli. So, what exactly is environmental stimuli? So, your environmental stimuli, this is your environmental stimuli. Your environmental stimuli will have things like, okay, your economics. So, obviously, as the gross domestic product of a country goes up, the more the consumer can spend because obviously consumers have more money to spend. Okay, so this is economics. If there is a recession, the buying power goes down, people are able to spend less, which means obviously, okay, the seller is not able to sell as much. So this is economics. This is one of the environmental stimuli. Okay, next you have legal. So obviously any legal restrictions. So any trade restrictions, for example, tariffs. You got customs, taxes, anything that's legal, any rules and regulations. And next you have political. Okay, and this has to do with politics. So along with your marketing stimuli, environmental stimuli will impact your buyer decision making process. So this is where the buyer decides whether he or she wants to buy the product. Okay, at what quantity, at what price, okay, so on and so forth. So this will impact what we call it as your buyer decision making process. Okay, as well as buyer characteristics. Okay, these two are part of the impact that the marketing stimuli and environmental stimuli have. Okay, so These two go on and become what's called a buyer response, which means that the decision-making process helps the buyer act on that decision. Okay, helps the buyer, okay, respond to what he or she decided. Okay, so say for example in this case, your buyer response. All right, this would be in the form of a product or brand choice. So the buyer may choose a certain product or a certain brand, depending on what he or she likes. Okay, retail or dealer choice, depending on pricing, for example, and promotion. Okay, you have purchase timing. So this has to do with the amount of time the buyer takes to buy a product, or the date and time when the buyer decides to buy the product. This has to do with season. Okay, so if the buyer buys a product which is within the season, then obviously that product is in demand, as a result of which the price will be high, and the buyer may not end up buying that many products. Okay, the quantity will be less. Okay, if it's off season and let's say the retailer is selling a product off season, he or she may be selling it for a lot less than how much he or she will charge during peak season, right? So say for example salt. We talk about salt. Okay, we're talking about road salt. In winter, okay, the buyer will pay much more than what the buyer may end up paying once the winter is finished. Okay, once you have summer. Okay, so again, this has to do with timing. So this has to do with purchase timing. So purchase timing has to do with the time during which, or time at which you decide to buy the product. Okay, so obviously it has an impact on price. It may have an impact on promotion. It may have an impact on a lot of other things. Okay, quality of the product as well. Okay, maybe the quality off season is not that great as during peak season. Okay, such as soil, for example, if you're buying topsoil. Okay, the topsoil in winter may not be as great as the one in summer. Okay, so this is purchase timing and then purchase amount. So this has to do with quantity. So obviously, how much a buyer buys depends on his or her budget, but it also depends on whether he or she wants to buy from that particular retailer or whether he or she wants to buy that particular brand or product. Okay, so that would be purchase amount and purchase frequency. So we talked about lifetime value of a customer. This has to do with repeat customers. Okay, so purchase frequency would be when the returning customer or repeat customer comes back to buy the product again. To what extent, at what frequency does he or she buy that product? Okay, does he or she buy that product once, twice, 3 times, 4 times a year, 5 times a year, 6 times a year? This all translates into gross and net profit, and that's the reason why this data is important. It has an impact on the financial statements of the retailer or the seller. Okay, so this is your purchase frequency at the end of the day. Purchase frequency. All right, so that will be it for this video. On behalf of V Electronics, this is Ubayd. Have yourself a great day.